So this weekend we have Oleksandr Usyk defending his unified heavyweight titles against Daniel Dubois. I believe that this is technically a consolidation bout because it's the regular champion fighting the super champion for the WBA. The monkey business that the WBA are on with all their belts. But nevertheless, this is actually quite an important fight because, of course, Daniel Dubois, I guess, in a sense, is a mandatory for Oleksandr Usyk, who's the unified heavyweight champion. And so, yeah, there's significance to this. And I do think that this fight has gone under the radar. I think a lot of that has come from the fact that Anthony Joshua fought a couple of weekends ago. There was controversy surrounding the White fight falling through. And then there was intrigue about who would fight next. He fought Hellenius, but then there's the aftermath of that fight. So I feel like this fight has kind of been overshadowed by that. But also, additionally, I think people just don't really see this fight being all that competitive. So that's kind of, people don't care about it as much, potentially. Myself personally, I understand why people see it that way, but I've gone back and forth on this. Initially, I thought this would be a fairly one-sided fight in favour of Oleksandr Usyk, but the closer the fight has come, I see how it can shape up and be an entertaining and interesting, potentially even a close fight. This is very much the young upstart versus the grandmaster. The grandmaster being Oleksandr Usyk, who is one of boxing's finest technicians, alongside being just a generally great natural athlete. And then you have Dubois, the young upstart. He's much younger, he's much bigger. Well, say much in inverted commas, we'll get to that. But he lacks the experience, he lacks the technique, the tactical know-how, but can probably compensate with the brute force and physicality of being the bigger man, the natural heavyweight. And with Usyk's kind of grandmaster status comes, the skill, the wisdom, the stuff you'd expect, and what actually sets him apart. But there's also a fair amount of miles on the clock, even though by certain standards he's relatively well preserved at 36. But he's still 10 years Dubois senior and has boxed for like 2 decades. And I personally feel like we're maybe starting to see that catch up on Oleksandr Usyk, just where he's fighting regularly, training regularly, but his age is going up, those miles on the clock are stacking up. Fights maybe seem to be a bit harder up at heavyweight because he has to work so much harder to keep the guys off. And I think it's easy to dismiss Dubois in this fight, given that chasm of skill and experience. That's what I thought I was doing initially. Because personally, I've never been impressed by Dubois. I've got a lot of respect for him. He seems like a lovely guy, Dubois, and he seems like a guy who's really set on achieving his dream of becoming a heavyweight champion. But for me, that just can't take away from what I see in the ring. And in all honesty, when I watch Dubois, I see a basic, stiff, upright heavyweight who isn't particularly quick. However, he's got a decent, consistent work rate, kind of physical, does have a good selection of punches in his arsenal, but I've never been sold on Dubois. I was actually quite confused when he first turned pro. There was so much fanfare around him. And I was thinking, this guy's as stiff as a board. And I also remember when Anthony Joshua turned pro back in 2013, and people were saying, oh, he's too stiff, he's too upright, he's the next Frank Bruno. And I'm just thinking, Anthony Joshua, at both similar stages in their careers, Anthony Joshua or Daniel Dubois made Anthony Joshua look like Muhammad Ali. Like, different ball game in terms of fluidity. Dubois is just very robotic, very mechanical. And it's not to say that AJ isn't, but Dubois just takes it to another level. But not to rag on Dubois, he is a good, solid heavyweight. And I think really his biggest shortcoming is experience. And as I said, it's easy to dismiss Dubois, but I think largely the direction of this fight is determined on how willing Dubois is to fight the kind of fight he needs, which I believe is a really rough and rugged, almost street fight type fight. And that's where I talk about the inexperience of Dubois, because we haven't seen him challenged all that much. He's had a couple of rough moments in his career, especially recently, but he's still a bit of an unknown quantity, I feel, especially psychologically. Dubois is a little bit of an enigma, I find. He has this very strange character. He has like a bit of a childlike demeanour. And I'm not saying this in any kind of pejorative way. He just has a very particular psychological makeup, I feel. And that can actually make him quite difficult to read. And this makeup, I want to say, is playing devil's advocate. I feel like it could potentially work in his favour. It could work in his favour as he might just be less likely to overthink. And when he's in the ring, because he's not trying to overthink, he's not trying to analyse every step before he's made it, he might just be more willing to take the fight by the scruff of the neck. Unlike Anthony Joshua, who many people criticised, I think in both fights, that he wasn't willing to do that. He was overthinking, he was gun shy. And even Anthony Joshua himself admitted that he's an overthinker, which was plain to see for almost everyone, especially in this stage in his career. And if Anthony Joshua, who's prone to overthinking, he's giving Oleksandr Usyk too much time, he's standing off, giving Usyk the time, the space that he needs to operate well, particularly in the first fight. Daniel Dubois, who's less of an overthinker, he might not give Oleksandr Usyk that opportunity. And that doesn't necessarily guarantee that Dubois wins, but what I feel it will offer him is a better chance of getting close to Usyk and landing on Usyk, which is what I think he needs to do, because, just my opinion, but I'm sure many of you will agree, Dubois can't match Usyk for skill. Dubois is too basic. Usyk, on the other hand, is too advanced, too experienced as well. However, I think Dubois has more than enough size and physicality to rough up Usyk, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to get him up close. He needs to make him feel the pace. You really try to pin him down and just sap his energy any way you can. And look to impose himself on Usyk, who's the smaller man. Although I was quite surprised that the lack of difference in height. Oleksandr Usyk's rated at listed at 6'3". Dubois listed at 6'5". But it seemed like there might only be an inch and a half, an inch or half an inch between them. So I don't think the height difference is going to be that big. However, the weight difference, I think that is much, much bigger. I think that's definitely a legit difference between these two, Dubois being the much heavier man. And I think Dubois needs to kind of take inspiration from Usyk's fight with Chisora. It's kind of ironic as well, because Daniel Dubois is being trained by Don Charles, who was Chisora's longtime trainer for this fight. So I think he just has to try and hit him anywhere. And I know people, they don't like it when you say things like this. They don't like it when you say, oh, get stuck in, grab the fight by the scruff of the neck, hit him anywhere. They're like, oh no, there has to be more technique. There has to be more of a technical element to it. You guys know, if you watch my channel, I love technique. I preach the importance of technique, biomechanically, tactically, how you apply it. That's me. That's the stuff I love. But even I understand that sometimes there's a gap in technique and it's just too big. And so you have to use other tools. You have to use other strengths. And yeah, it's not technical. It doesn't hold up to the technical standards set by fighters like Lomachenko and Floyd Mayweather. But you have to give yourself the best chance of winning. And so Dubois, as far as I can see, he just has to try to pin Usyk down, drain him, hold him, hit him anywhere, just inflict damage. Because we've seen in that Chisora fight, which Usyk clearly won. I'm not one of these people who thinks, oh, the Chisora fight was a draw or Chisora beat him. I think that's absolute nonsense. I think Usyk was a clear winner in that fight. But it wasn't vintage Usyk. It was Usyk who, I don't know, looked a bit flustered at points. He had this massive mountain of a man in front of him who was just constantly coming forward, swinging these wild shots over. And yeah, it roughed Usyk up. Usyk still won, but it was a tough fight. And you want to give yourself the best chance of winning. And just go back to Don Charles. I saw that short clip of Charles taking Dubois on the pads. And I think the preparation looks good. Now, that's only a few seconds of months-long preparation. But I feel like the intention's there. They've been saying the right thing. From glimpses, they've been doing the right thing. And I think they're going to give themselves the best chance of winning this fight, because their preparation is matching the intention, and the intention is the correct type of intention to have. As for Usyk, I think he's going to have to approach this fight like the first AJ fight. Not that the AJ rematch was was a poor performance from Usyk, but I just felt like the first performance was really stellar. I thought that was a fantastic performance, and in my opinion, that's kind of vintage Usyk. That's the top level, best version of Usyk I've seen. I think I'd say that, um, and I think he's going to have to approach this fight like that one, where he really sticks it on Dubois early. Uh, I did analyses on that first Joshua fight and Usyk's performance, and within like 3, 4, 5 seconds, he'd already split the jab of AJ with a left hand, and it was like, okay, he's got him under wraps. It sounds crazy, but Usyk was able to get off such advanced offense so early, and that really set the tone for the fight, because that really shakes an opponent's confidence. Like, oh wow, it's the fight I'm at my freshest, and I've just been tagged with his money punch. How, like, where does this go from here? And Usyk, I felt in that fight, he had a good marriage of the movement and kind of managing the distance, staying off the ropes, being able to move around the ring, but also standing his ground. He wasn't just conceding every time. He was looking to manage the center of the ring himself. Rather than use his feet, he'd use his head. Like, there's always a moving component with Usyk. And I felt like it was just a great balance of using his feet, using his upper body defense, and obviously that to set up his offense. And yeah, he stuck it on AJ. Although AJ, we have to say, did seem a little bit timid in that fight. Although he did land his own offense. And I think one thing that Oleksandr Usyk didn't get credit for was there were a couple of times where he was maybe buzzed by AJ. But AJ, I don't think he registered in his head, because Usyk he's so experienced, he's got a really good poker face. And so if Dubois hopes to maybe, I imagine there's probably going to be a time in this fight where Dubois does maybe buzz Usyk. If he goes after it, we're going to see really like how well Usyk can keep the heat off, because I don't think Dubois is going to be standing off, not unless Usyk really patterns him from early, as the kids say, and gets him under manners and is landing all kinds of offense and really gets Dubois to shell up. So and I think that's what he has to do. I think he has to just get Dubois under control, so the pace is much more manageable early, especially, and then from there he can start to maybe take a few more risks, maybe look to break Dubois down as the fight progresses. So to sum this up, I don't think Dubois winning this fight is a massive shock. It wouldn't be the biggest shock to my system, just based on what I see in front of me. However, that being said, I do favour the older man in this one. I favour Oleksandr Usyk to beat Daniel Dubois, because even though Dubois, I feel, has the physical tools to make it a rough fight, he is still quite upright. He is still quite open to be hit, and he's coming off of the Lorena fight, which I think was the first time he had fought a southpaw as a professional. And I feel like the Lorena fight could be offering good and bad parts, good and bad aspects, because he's coming into this fight after having some preparation fighting a southpaw. Like, at least you fought one guy. I don't know if it will amount to much, but it's something, and something's probably better than nothing. However, against Lorena, who also is a cruiserweight, although I think Lorena is probably a naturally bigger guy than Usyk. I think he fought a heavyweight more often, and just looking at the eye test, he seems to be a bit thicker set and probably a bit more powerful, because of course Lorena dropped Dubois and hurt him numerous times. As I say, not the greatest advert for Dubois. But there are just so many unknowns, I feel, regarding Dubois' mental and physical toughness, because he's going to be fighting away from home in a big stadium. I think it's like 30,000 maybe. Of course, he fought at Wembley Stadium, but will there be any residual nerves or demons from that Lorena fight? Because even though Dubois won, he didn't really win in good fashion. But then on the flip side, you say, oh, he came through that adversity to get the stoppage. That could galvanise his confidence. And on top of that, nobody really seems to expect much of him in this fight, so is the pressure on Usyk. I think that's definitely an important dynamic. Is Usyk is going to be fighting in Poland, and Usyk is famously someone who's fought his highest level fights away from home. So he's kind of become used to the hostile crowd, I want to say. Now he's going back home obviously he's not from Poland, but there's going to be a large Ukrainian audience in Poland. And will he be able to deal with the pressure of fighting in front of his countrymen who, let's be real, because of events in the past year, they probably want to see a big performance. They want something to be proud of, because they've had such a torrid time recently. So there's a lot of expectation on Usyk, not very much on Dubois. How is that dynamic going to play out? And of course, there's the physical as well. Usyk hasn't fought in a year, so that's a year of inactivity, which at an older age, how's it going to impact his performance? I suspect that we will probably see signs of that inactivity in Usyk's performance. However, as I say, for me, Dubois' mental toughness, especially, there are just too many question marks. And physically, I think as well, like we saw in the Joe Joyce fight, that you can damage Dubois and you can make him quit. And I'm not sure if Dubois actually has the greatest punch resistance. As I say, Lorena timed him a lot. Other fighters have managed to really kind of sting Daniel Dubois with shots, and he doesn't always react the best way. So yeah, Dubois' mental, physical toughness is a bit questionable for me. And so for that reason, I feel like Oleksandr Usyk wins this one, probably by late stoppage. I could say points, but I think Usyk probably will. It will get to a point where Usyk puts his foot on the gas. He's got Dubois in front of him. Dubois is just not offering that much in terms of movement, not really much of an active guard, and I think Usyk's just going to be able to piece him up, really start to chip away. So I think this will be a late stoppage win. My gut is just telling me, going towards the last quarter of the fight, round 9, 10, I think we're going to see Dubois really start to get fatigued, and he's just going to be too stationary. In Usyk, we've seen it doesn't take very long for him to get a second wind. Got very high work rate, and there's so many moving parts of his boxing style to focus on: the hands, the head, the feet. He feints, he throws those lighter tapping, probing shots, and then and the big counters as well. And I think a lot of people who I've seen who are saying the same thing, that they see Usyk stopping Dubois. They've used the phrase death by 1,000 cuts, and I think that's what this will be. Usyk just chipping away, just too accurate. And Dubois, I wouldn't be surprised if he probably quits again, because I know some people still take issue with how the Joe Joyce fight ended. Dubois quit. It's as simple as that. Fighters quit. They have their limit. They're human beings too. And I think we'll probably see Dubois probably see him throw in the towel rounds 9 or 10 maybe. So yeah, that's my take on this fight. Let me know what you guys think. Fuck, 18 minutes, jeez. Yeah, if you've made it this far, I appreciate it. Yeah, leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll get back to you. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.